All right, guys, so we have another 143 scale drift car to add to the list. In this video, I'm going to go over the HStar D43 01Q. Actually, mine is the 02Q because I have the Nissan Skyline, the R35 body. But if you get the Porsche, it'll be the 01Q. So I'll just show you the box real quick. This is actually a pretty nice box compared to some of the other brands I've already done reviews on. It has a pretty big battery in it, so it seems like it's got a good run time, but the car is really heavy, so I'll go over that. But yeah, they left a sticker which one's in there. I originally tried to get the light blue one, but they were out of stock after I tried ordering it, so I had to switch to... I actually got this one like for $10 cheaper, so I went with this white one because of the price. Let's see. So you can get them between 30 to 40 bucks. Depending on if there's any sales going on. Usually I get this stuff during like a sale where I can get like 10% off or something. So yeah, you can see there's different colors, and if you get the Porsche, it'll be 1Q, and then it'll be like 1Q1 for that one, 1Q2 or 1Q3. That's how it goes. Same for the Skyline, it'll be 2Q and then 2Q1, 2Q3, whatever. So that's how they do that. All right, so this is another die-cast little 143 scale drift car. So the body's metal alloy, so which makes it pretty heavy. This is actually the heaviest one I've seen so far. It's like around 109 grams, so it's pretty hefty. The closest one to that one was the 88 RC models, which that one, when it's put together here, it would be about 89 grams. So that one's roughly 20 grams heavier. Which is not a bad thing for drifting for the most part, but obviously if it gets too heavy, then it'll be too hard to push around and stuff. And at this size, if you go too heavy, the car's not even going to move. It'll just sit in place and spin. But I'm assuming that they did this right to where it's still a good drifter for how heavy it is. Especially as a all-wheel drive drifter. When you're making a rear-wheel drive drifter, it might be a little bit harder to push the weight around because you're only going to have the back two wheels trying to push all that weight along. But with all-wheel drive, you got all four wheels, helping push this weight around. But for drifting, extra weight is good most of the time, so it's not a bad thing. But if you're trying to race this thing, it would be terrible. I feel like this would probably be the slowest one, even though they probably do have a bigger motor and everything in here. To compensate, for the extra weight they've added to this one. I still think this wouldn't be very good for drifting. The ride height is pretty terrible. It's the same exact problem with the 88 RC. They had really bad ride height when it comes to the body placement on the chassis. It's just, the body's way too high. There's just too much space between the wheel and the arch there. So it just looks really goofy. All the other models, the Jiabailes and stuff, look really like good where the wheels are in the wheel well the way they're supposed to. So that's one of the issues I've seen so far with these die-cast bodies that they've been trying to do. For some reason they put them up really high, partly because the electronics need to stay pretty clear from this metal body. You don't want anything touching it to short anything out, but there's a lot of space inside here, and they use those little diode LEDs, so there's really bulky, like 3mm size LEDs in there. So when you push up on the wheel, they're actually hitting the light. So that was a bad idea to put those kind of LEDs for the headlights and stuff. They're probably okay for the taillights, but not up here where you need space. Otherwise, yeah, the wheel's actually hitting that. You can see it's like scratching it when I push up and roll it. Okay, so that's not good. I don't know why they did that. They could have used some small little LEDs. That would have been a much better choice, some little SMD ones or something. Don't know why they went with that. All right, so that's the first, negative thing I've seen so far, other than, obviously the ride height looks terrible. But the body itself is really detailed. It's really nice, actually. Like, this is a nice die-cast body. They just need to do a better job of, seating the body down on the chassis and getting rid of all that extra space there. So yeah, but the suspension does feel good. It's got, individual suspension across all four wheels, which is good. It feels pretty solid. Not better than a Nose, and probably not even better than the Haiboxing, the one I just did a review on. So I'll be comparing them all together. But the Haiboxing one has pretty nice suspension, but I think the Nose overall might have the best. It feels the best so far. But this one doesn't feel bad, so it's not like the suspension is bad or anything. So I actually have looked underneath the hood on these, and they don't use dog bones or anything. They use CVDs on all four, wheels. So it's kind of an interesting setup they did. There's a lot of parts in here that I might actually steal to use on my rear-wheel drive custom build. The wheel hubs, they have bearings and everything, and I actually want to use those for my build, so I might steal those from here. Because I think I can use the wheels from the Jiabailes and everything on these as well. They just barely fit. There might be like a little bit of sloppy movement, but they have the little hex head design inside there, just like the Jiabaile cars. So I'm pretty sure it's very similar to that, but just like a little bit smaller, a little hex shape. But you can just put them on and screw it in, and it seats pretty well, so you can get away with it. They do have really bulky plastic like tread on these wheels for drifting, and these wheels are actually very large. I think these are the biggest wheels I've seen so far, other than the new Jiabailes that have been coming out. When it comes to for a flat wide tire, these definitely win that battle. But for like overall bulky wheels and tires, I don't know. These things are pretty big compared to all the other ones, other than this one overall. But the rest of these wheels are pretty small. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, let me take off the body real quick, so you can see what's going on underneath this thing. So you have to take the front and back screws off to take this thing apart. So there's no just undoing the back and then sliding it apart. It doesn't work that way on this one. And this front one is already basically stripped on mine, because it looks like you see there's a little split on the plastic, so it cracked. So the screw doesn't hold very well on the plastic. So that's not good. But you can see they added 3 plates for extra added weight to the front. So they added weight up front, even though this car is already really heavy because of the body is metal as it is. They added 3 little metal plates in front to add extra weight in the front. So I guess it's probably too back heavy. There's probably more weight back here, so they had to compensate and put more up front. Okay, and I can't flip this over because those plates will just fall. They're just sitting there. So they have 3 of these. So that's an interesting design choice too. I haven't seen anybody else put added weight to the front like this yet. So of course on the heaviest car they did. It's kind of funny. Yeah, this is a pretty interesting build design compared to all the other ones. They put the battery on top with this clip. So, and there's a screw usually there. I took it off ahead of time, so I could do this quicker. The battery is a 300 milliamp. It's upside down, but you get the idea. So. So it's a pretty big battery. It's pretty hefty compared to the size of the Jiabaile batteries and everything that most of these have. This is size comparison, but these are usually 1 to 200 milliamp. So this one says it's 130. So yeah, it's not a bad idea if you have enough space up top for yeah. See, I knew I was gonna make that mistake turning it over. Anyway, yeah, so there's enough space up here to where you could have the battery on top. Otherwise, some of these other bodies are too low profile. You wouldn't be able to get away with that. But let's see. Overall, same, kind of basic electronics and everything. I'm not going to really completely disassemble this one. The one thing I wanted to point out, like I said, was that this one has CVDs in there and really nice wheel hubs. So I guess I'll take off one of the wheels here. I don't see any extra. Oh wait, yeah, I do see extra. So we do come with another set of wheels. So there's racing wheels. These are rubber. And yeah, they're glued on, so you can't just take them on and off. These are plastic and they're, one piece. You can't take those tires off the wheels. So this is the other stuff that comes in the box. And I'm not gonna pour these out, but yeah, it comes with set of racing wheels. See, it's similar little hex. It's hard to see, but it's a little hex shape in there. And then you can almost make these, you know, fit good enough to interchange. So you can make it work. All right, and then yeah, the USB charging cable these all come with. Comes with 4 cones, and these cones are exactly the same ones that come with the 88 RC. So the other diecast model that's out there, they have the same cones. So I'm not sure if these cars are being made in the same factory. The electronics and everything are different. You can see, you know, they're completely different. This one's a lot more like the Jiabaile, with the front suspension is the same as the Jiabaile, and they put that same suspension in the rear. Overall, this thing is very similar to the Jiabaile's. While this one is completely different in its design. It's really bulky. It's a pretty solid chassis. This plastic, you know, frame is thick and it's sturdy. I definitely can't really like bend it or anything. So obviously that adds to the weight of it. So that's why another reason why this thing's so heavy on top of the diecast body that's on it. So let me just take off. Let me just disconnect these LEDs. I have to stop holding it like this. So it's got, you know, I actually like the detail. They put smoked headlights and taillights on this body, which is a nice little touch. So when the lights come on, it'll have that smoked look. All right, and they don't do that on every single version. Different, you know, colors come with different like headlights. So they smoke some of them and not on others. I think, at least it looks like in the pictures. So there's a motor in there that looks more like this instead of the usual little brushed motors that we see that look like this and the Jiabailes and everything. That's usually what we see in them. But in this guy, we have one of these kind of style brushed motors in here. So it's a little bit more powerful, which for obvious reasons, this thing's a lot heavier. So they went with a little bit bigger and stronger brushed motor to power it. And take off this wheel. Oh. Jeez, these screws are pretty long. Okay. So you see, it's got bearings in here, and this bearing size is actually really nice that I can fit, you know, like I said, the other style stuff for like the wheels that we can use from the Jiabaile will be able to go onto this little hex head. Let's see. Yeah, once you put the screw in and tighten it down, it'll work just like the original wheels do. If for some reason you wanted to swap out to, you know, one of these wheels or something, you can interchange these. And these wheels are basically the same as the 88 RC ones, which actually the 88 RC ones are a little bit smaller and actually fit this perfect. So the wheels on the 88 RC model have the same size little hex that the wheels mount to, which is I think like 0.5 millimeter smaller than the ones that come on the Jiabaile cars. So it's just a little bit smaller in that hex mounting area on these. So, but these also fit on here as well. So you can pretty much swap out all those wheels on this model and vice versa on all those. So if you want to run these wheels, actually, you know what? You might not be able to, because I think these are a little bit smaller than the Jiabailes. So you can't put these on the Jiabaile car, but you can put the Jiabaile, you know, wheels on this one. You know what I mean? So you can kind of interchange them in a way. All right. But yeah, that's like, you know, other than the CVD in here, the other best thing that I noticed was the bearings and the wheel hubs. And I might actually end up using these wheel hubs for my custom rear-wheel drive design, because these are actually really nice. And I don't feel like really 3D printing any wheel hubs. If I can just use one that has the bearings with the right size to fit those wheels, that'll be perfect. So I'll make that work. So I might end up, you know, taking these after I finish this review. But overall, you know, this car seems pretty nice. That's all I really want to show you for this part. I'll go to the test drive now and I'll show you, you know, the lights on and all the other things going on. Here's the remote that comes with it as well. So I'll go over everything when I do the driving or the drifting part. So you got your steering trim, you got your the gyro sensitivity, the lights, The speed, it only has 2 speeds, I think like high and low, yep. And then on and off. There is no steering dual rate button, so there's no dual rates. You can't change the angle of the steering at all, which is kind of disappointing. So the only way to really adjust the steering on how much, like how hard the angle is by adjusting the gyro. If you put the gains higher, your steering will be, bigger compared, wider compared to going to lower, and it'll be a tighter turn. That's the only way you're gonna be able to adjust that. All right, but I'll go over that in the next part of this video. So, all right, let's go over to that. All right, it's time to test drive this chunky monkey. Remember, this thing's like 109 grams. And to put that in perspective, I think the Jiabaile Versions RX-7, the orange RX-7, is about 51 to 52 grams roughly. So it's less than half the weight of this. But this thing has a more powerful motor, a bigger battery, obviously a very heavy metal body with even weights up front. So let's see how this thing does now. For the transmitter, it takes 2 AA batteries, which you have to screw the little screw in to keep them in, which is really annoying. This doesn't slide in place. You have to put the screw in. And the screw is pretty short, and it's like a shallow hole that it goes into, so it's gonna strip out really easily after like 2 or 3 times taking it off, so that's not cool. So this thing will be a problem where you're gonna need to get a longer screw to put the batteries in. So I can already see that's gonna be an issue. All right, so to turn it on, you just turn it on with the switch, and then you just press the button on the bottom for a couple seconds. And mine is not. Huh. Okay, now we're good. So that was weird. It wouldn't bind right away when the transmitter was turned on before the car, which is weird. Usually it's the other way around. All right, well, that was just, probably just a weird little, thing. It's supposed to obviously bind right away when the transmitter is turned on, but for some reason it wasn't connecting right after it. Maybe they're too close, I don't know. Anyways, seems like we're good now. All right, so the red light just means that it's on, I guess. When you actually turn it, that's when the green light comes on, when you actually put input. Okay, so it's throttle, brake, reverse, brake, reverse. So the brake and the reverse are the same. So throttle, brake, reverse. So the reverse lights are the same as the brakes, getting brighter. For the front, it seems like they change brightness depending on how much power is being sucked up by the motor. So when you go like full throttle, it eats a little bit of the power away from the lights for a second. All right, so there's 2 speeds. I think it's on high. That's low, yep. So that's low speed, high. So go back to slow. Let's see how the throttle ramps up. Barely touching right there. Not too bad. All right. And I turned the gyro down to 0, but it seems like they have a little arrow right around the 50 where they want you to like keep it for the default number, so middle of the road. But I'll get to there once I'm testing it. And then let's see, we got the lights button. Just makes them flash, turns them off, turns them on. There's no changing the colors, so I guess I get blue with this one, which looks pretty good. Blue suits this one really well. Even has kind of like a red, white, and blue thing going as well. So I guess you got to find out what you get when you get whatever color you buy. So it's gonna have different lights underneath it. All right, so it looks like you got the steering trim, which I'm not gonna mess with. It's sitting at 0, which hopefully should be centered. All right, so let's start test driving it at low speed with no gyro. Let's see how it does, and then go from there. And remember, there's no dual rates setting, so I can't change the angle of the steering to make it tighter or looser. So. A little touchy, a little squirrely. But that's to be expected right now with no gyro. I mean, it's definitely, you know, drivable and you can drift it without the gyro. It's just, you know, a little bit more difficult. So let's put the speed up to high. So this would probably be more uncontrollable. All right, you guys get the idea. Let's put the gyro to, I guess, 20%, and then we'll put the speed back to low. Like, it seems like it's kind of hard, but it's really touchy and everything. But once you start getting the feel for it, it's not too bad. Let's go up to, I guess, full speed on 20% gyro. Yeah, it's easier to push the weight around of this thing at the higher speed. So, I mean, it actually glides and slides really well for how heavy it is. It doesn't like just completely stop it like because of its weight. It actually continues to kind of just roll and slide pretty well because of its weight. The momentum keeps carrying. I'd be careful though, like slamming this thing into a wall or something. This thing's gonna hit hard, whatever it hits. Very touchy and controllable lower end of the throttle, I feel, when you're drifting around, so that's actually pretty good. All right, let's bump up the gyro to about the 50 mark, and then we'll lower the speed back down. I would say this one drifts probably the closest to my rear-wheel drive custom builds. I could probably drift this one on the glass table because it really just kind of stays in a small, tight little area without gaining too much speed like the usual all-wheel drive setups do, especially the lightweight ones. They go fast till they get going, so you can't really drive them on a table. Let me up the speed to max, around 50 gyro. Let's reverse direction here. I mean, it is pretty easy to spin out or overdo it if you cut in a little bit too much, but overall it's pretty easy to control, to be honest, for what you would think this thing would drive like with how heavy it is. I'm gonna bump the gyro up to about 75, so right around there, and put the speed back down to halfway or low speed. Now let's up the speed to max. All right, let's up the gyro to max, low speed. All right, let's go full speed. Okay, so with the gyro all the way maxed out, it obviously doesn't allow you to make really tight turns. It, it gives you a little bit wider, more open sweeping turns, which is to be expected because, with a gyro, you really don't want the gyro at max gains unless you want to make sure that you can't really turn sharp. It'll just do, bigger, bigger sweeps with your drifts. If you want to do tighter turns, you would drop the gyro gain as low as you can, as long as you can keep it under control. So somewhere between like 20 to 50% is roughly where you're going to want to hang out at. Pretty much almost where they keep the little arrow is pretty good, especially if you're beginning. And out of the box, they already had the arrow pointing there. So that's definitely a good area to be if you're, starting out, or even if you've been doing this for a while too. So the speed, high and low, either way, it performs really well either way. I might be able to drive this thing on like my glass table with the speed on low, and then the gyro, somewhere between 20 and 50 should do pretty well. It actually feels very similar to how my little Diecast custom rear-wheel drive setup is. Like the one that I have with the Lamborghini on it that I custom built, that one's around like almost 80 to 90 grams, I think roughly like 88 to 90 grams. So the weight is actually very similar. So that one's about, almost 20 grams heavier than my rear-wheel drive setup, but they have that same feel where they glide around and just the momentum just kind of carries because of its weight. It's kind of weird because I was just driving the Haiboxing one. I just did that one, and they drift so much. They all drift very similar, but they all feel the same, but yet feel different. It's really hard to explain unless you've sat there and like test them all yourself. Obviously, some are better than others in certain areas, but they all pretty much do the same thing on on a vinyl floor. They just will drift around pretty decent. This one's actually got pretty good control. The Haiboxing's got decent control, and so the Jiabaile. Well, the other ones are in the same kind of ballpark too, where you really can't go wrong with any of them, but I still need to do a comparison video on all of these, which I'm gonna do here soon. So I think this is a really good choice for a little drift car if you just wanna strictly stick with drifting. I don't think it's good for racing unless you wanna take off the body and put like a plastic body on it. Then that one might be really fast because of the motor and the battery and everything. It's got a lot of power. It does come to a complete stop like right after you let go of the throttle. But it does slide a little bit, but the wheels aren't, moving. It's just sliding with the wheels stationary. That's what it's doing when it's sliding because it's so heavy. But either way, it's still a really good drifter. I would say this is, a good one to choose as well. Especially between 30 to 40 bucks. I see sometimes they're trying to charge 50, 60 or more for these. do not buy them for that much. Just try to get one on sale or something for at least the range of 30 to 40. Like 30 is definitely what you should be, you know, trying to get these for. 30, 35 bucks, you know, on AliExpress at least. I mean, Amazon or eBay or this and that, you're probably gonna end up spending more. I usually don't have any issues with AliExpress, so I just keep, you know, getting stuff from them. But yeah, so this one is a really good choice. So I'm gonna have to do a comparison video on all of these little 143 scale little drifters to kind of figure out which one's the best. Maybe do like a shootout of, you know, which category one is better. And like the Jiabaile one is probably the best for racing overall, while all these other ones are basically fighting for the best drifting car. So yep, that's about it. If you have any questions, just leave some comments down below, and I will hope to see you guys in the next video.